Welcome, everyone, to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Thursday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, yes, there's a cat sitting on me. No, that's not one of the normal cats that crashes this show. We are kitty sitting, and sometimes it is just easier to accept defeat and try to not move a cat for the fourth time. So, say hello to Shiloh. And while Shiloh is hanging out, we will be chatting, and hopefully when she's not hanging out, we will be chatting about the Stanley Cup playoffs and the NBA playoffs after a wild night one more time in the National Hockey League and in the NBA. If you're looking for the fight stuff, that is going to be on part 2 of this particular program today. So let's get right into it and talk some hockey. So, as you can see, cat's still here. Okay, so let's get into another classic last night between the Vancouver Canucks and the Edmonton Oilers. This has been such an unbelievable series. And what's been interesting is it kind of feels like both teams are just exchanging good games, and then the other one is holding on for dear life. Like, the good game that you get still only gets you like a 1-goal advantage, because either you're not putting it away or the other team is just kind of holding on and doing what they can. But this has been such an amazing series. And last night it was the Canucks' turn. And last night it was certainly more what you would expect from the Vancouver Canucks. They were the better team throughout. And obviously there was a lot of talk in the 48 hours leading up to that game about, 24 hours leading up to that game about Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson. And I would say both got the message. Neither were as dominant as we've seen in the regular season, but in the playoffs, it is kind of difficult to just dominate the way you did when you're playing Columbus on a Wednesday in January. But they showed up in a big-time way, and there was that shift with a couple minutes to go in the second period that I thought really set the tone for them, where they just spent the whole possession, the whole shift in the offensive zone, and that really kind of sent that message like, hey, we know we are two of the best players in this game, and we are going to prove it. And so I do really think that when you look at this from a Vancouver standpoint, that is a huge positive that you have got those guys to start to click a little bit. And now with Besser and Miller still playing really well, and we'll get to that in a little bit, that this makes Vancouver feel like a dangerous team. That the whole team was really going yesterday, and offensively they had complete control of this hockey game. Full shifts in the offensive zone, and really, when you're looking at this series, this is what this Vancouver team is actually capable of. This Vancouver side is a team that can roll 4 lines, they can control offensively. You want to style with them? Elias Pettersson can style. Quinn Hughes can style. You want to play a bit more of a grinded out game? JT Miller will happily do that, and Brock Besser will finish. This is a team that when they are rolling, they are so difficult to defend. And you saw that last night. And I have said, when both teams are at their best, I think Vancouver's better. And I do believe we saw that last night. Now, you could certainly make the case that Edmonton wasn't at their best, but you saw the best from Vancouver in that game. And I think clearly the changes worked. Pettersson got going with Lindholm, phenomenal redirect to, I don't think he planned to hit it off the post, but he put it on goal, and that leads to the JT Miller overtime winner with 32 seconds to go in this game. And so they got rolling a little bit. The other lines stayed what they were, and you once again saw a Vancouver team that felt very comfortable rolling with 3 to 4 lines here, and that was something that we just haven't seen from them in a really long time. And I think the real catalyst of this is JT Miller. And I'm not going to say I owe JT Miller an apology. I don't think he's been staying up at night. But I was wrong about the JT Miller thing. I thought it was a waste of a trade for a first-round pick. I thought it was a waste of a contract extension. But these are the moments why you bring him in. Now, you can very easily critique the decision-making that got them to the point initially of bringing JT Miller in on a team that was still probably in a spot where they should have been rebuilding a little bit, and the contract extension after he kind of hadn't earned it, but it's paying off now. And so sometimes two wrongs do make a right. And it has led to JT Miller being the leader on this team and the catalyst for so much. The battles with Connor McDavid down low. They had that shift, I think it was in the third period even, where Miller is just in an all-out battle with McDavid in the defensive zone for 30, 40 seconds, comes back up ice and gets a scoring opportunity before he ducks away. He has set the tone for this Vancouver team all series long. And he has been the one who has been at the center of so many things. And so it was fitting that last night he is the one that gets that goal. But you look at a lot of Besser goals, and this isn't to take away from Besser at all, but a lot of it starts with something JT Miller did. And again, I don't know if I'd want to host a podcast with the cat, but I do think that this is a guy who, now that the Canucks are playing in truly meaningful hockey games, he has been their best player in most of them. And that is why they brought him in. Again, you can critique the decision-making all you want, but now that they are in a spot where playing winning hockey matters, this guy is stepping up and playing some of the best hockey he has played in a Vancouver Canucks jersey. He's been over a point per game the last 3 seasons, and he has been on fire for this group. And again, I have been very critical of the decisions to bring him in and critical of the player at several times, but now when they have needed him the most, he has so clearly been their best player that it has really been a big boost. And now, if Pettersson is still going, if that Lindholm pairing works, and if that third line can continue to be a real thorn for Edmonton, this feels like a very complete Vancouver Canucks team one more time, and that is a big problem for the Edmonton Oilers. But of course, it's Vancouver, so there can't not be controversy. It sounds like Thatcher Demko is making some progress to returning, and that has led to discussions of, goaltending controversy? Which is insane to me. There is no controversy. Thatcher Demko gets the net when he's back. Now, you have to make sure he is back. That this can't be, I'm about 75%, I think I can go. Nope, then you're waiting. You have to be 100%, because the guy right now is playing really well. Shelovs is still playing out of his mind type of a hockey, and was also a part of Vancouver coming away with a victory in that game. But when Thatcher Demko is ready to come back, this is his goal. Shelovs is a great story. Demko is one of the great goalies in the world right now. And you have to roll out there with that guy. And that there is no question about it. Shelovs has been an amazing story. He has been someone who has really battled his way into this spot. He is still your third string goalie. And if I'm going down, I'm going down with one of the best goalies in the world. So Shelovs has made it so you don't have to rush Demko back at 65, 75, even 85%. But if Demko is 100%, it's his net. That end of discussion. It is not, in my opinion, as easy of a discussion in Edmonton, because Stuart Skinner kind of sucked for a little bit there. And now Edmonton's season is on the line Saturday night, back at home. Calvin Pickard was as excellent can be when you only need to make 19 saves to pick up a win in game 4. Game 5, he was tested much more substantially, and I thought held his own. He's certainly not the reason they lost, but they did lose. And so now your season's on the line. The Pickard thing is great when it's 2-1 and it's 2-2, but now you have one game for your season. Where are you going? And like, if you're looking at how they've played, it's so simple. It's Calvin Pickard. Stuart Skinner was a liability for this team for great stretches of this series, and I would go so far as to say cost them games, actively cost them games in this series, and things would probably be flipped, if not over, by now if Stuart Skinner played the way that Edmonton brass thinks he can play. But it gets a little messy when you start to consider the future. On the one hand, if you put Calvin Pickard in for Game 6 against Vancouver and you lose, you are now going into an offseason where Stuart Skinner is kind of supposed to be your goalie of the future, but you very clearly don't trust him with your season on the line, and you can't exactly wait to develop a goalie when Draisaitl's contract is up in a year and McDavid's contract is up in 2 years. So you kind of need a dude who can win now. And I think Edmonton would suggest, unless Skinner comes in and posts like a 103 goals against average and a 960 save percentage the rest of the way, I would say Edmonton fans are probably looking for a replacement in net anyway. But I do think that there is something there for Stuart Skinner. Like, there were stretches where you thought, okay, they have the goalie of the future figured out. I don't know if they do, but if you go with Pickard and you lose, you really don't, right? Like, because now you have to come back and be like, hey, we were just kidding. Like, I know that guy who's played on like 19 different teams started ahead of you in the most important time of the year, but no. You're our guy. You're our guy. Just trust me. That's a bit of an awkward conversation to have. On the other hand, say you start Stuart Skinner in Game 6, and he gives up a goal in the first 3 minutes and 2 in the first 8. That is probably not going to be the most receptive arena to the struggles of Stuart Skinner, and then you have a chance of losing him forever. Like that could be something that just breaks the kid. And so it is such an interesting dynamic for Edmonton. And now the logical option, because of what I just laid out, you have Draisaitl, you have McDavid, you just have to win. Worry about next year when next year comes. You just have to win. So I do think that you probably should go Calvin Pickard. He has played better than Stuart Skinner has at any point in this series. He has been the better of your two goalies. And so I think you just have to roll with the hot hand, situation be damned. But it is kind of interesting to see how the dominoes could fall coming off of that. Moving out east, it is the Rangers taking on the Carolina Hurricanes, at least it was. That series is now over as the Rangers avoid disaster in another game where they were soundly outplayed. This series had 6 games. In at least 5 of them, Carolina was the better team. And in most by a significant margin. And that has to be incredibly difficult for Rod Brind'Amour to swallow and for the Carolina Hurricanes franchise and fan base to swallow. That shouldn't happen. And it's happening a lot for Carolina. We'll get to that in a second. But for the Rangers, Chris Kreider has established himself as an all-time great in New York. I don't know if the guy will get a statue, but he should get something when he retires. I don't know if he is jersey retirement worthy, but if they had forever a Ranger, he's that. Like, whatever the next step down from jersey retirement. And honestly, man, they've won 1 championship in like 80 years. If you want to retire his jersey, by all means, go for it. This was legendary status for a guy who has been so important to this team and a part of the foundation of this franchise for so long. And he has his big breakout game when they need it the most. Down 3-1 with 13 minutes to go. He gets a gosh darn hat trick to lead this team into the Eastern Conference Finals. And like when you look at what he has done, and how he has been the leader for this team for so long, when you start to get compared to Mark Messier with the Rangers in terms of leadership, and I think Mess is maybe a touch overrated, but in Ranger lore, when you start getting compared to that cat, given what happened in 1994, you're doing something right. And he has been so important to this team. When we talk about Carolina outplaying the Rangers, we're kind of talking about Carolina outplaying the Rangers save for one, because Kreider has been everywhere in this series. His speed matches what you need to have in today's game. His physical presence in front gives him an edge. He is a rare combination of incredibly quick, very good skater, and scores most of his goals where Dave Vanderchuk and Tomas Holmstrom used to live. Like, you would think with that kind of speed, it's a bunch of goals off the rush. And there are certainly some, but a lot of them are what we saw last night. Deflection in front, jamming away at the side of the goal. Those sorts of plays that lead to success. He is everything you need. And when you want to talk about, like, setting a tone and all of those different cliche things that I do think matter, he's the one. He is absolute. So you can put a C on whoever the hell you want on that team. It's that guy. That guy is the leader on this hockey club and the tone setter and one of the reasons why they are off to the Eastern Conference Finals. Another reason would be Igor Shesterkin with a couple of huge saves late to get them there. But for the Hurricanes, it's heartbreak, man. It keeps happening. Like, this is a team that has been good enough to win a championship for a few years now. And it's banana peel after banana peel after banana peel, and they haven't even made it to the Cup final, which does feel like it is being a bit harsh. It's like, oh, well, you haven't even been one of the final 2, but they have been in win now mode for a little bit. And the thing is, I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I kind of know what the answer is. It's a better goalie. But aside from that, where do you turn? Because like the talent on this team is exceptional. They had an amazing deadline getting Gensel and Kuznetsov. They go and get Burns a couple of years ago. He was big. And then you have a lot of pieces filling in around it. Like Aho's obviously great. Teravainen is fine. But Martinook had a really good series. Nikash had an excellent series. Drury was everywhere. Kotkaniemi is fine. Like, they have the depth players you would think you need. They have one of the better blue lines in the National Hockey League. They have all the pieces. And they have one of the best coaches in the league. So a lot of the attention now goes between the pipes. And look, I was critical of Freddie Anderson. He kept them in a few of these games in this series. I'm not going to go so far as to say he cost them in this game, but they needed him to kind of steal a couple of those in the third period, and he didn't. In a game where he was tested 6 times in the first half of it, they needed him to be better than he was. And that, I guess, has always been the thing there, right? Like, they've tried to go this guy was an elite backup, so let's go with him, with Antti Ranta. They tried to go with, okay, well, we've seen Freddie Anderson do it before at certain spots, so maybe we can get him here. They need a real guy there. And that's probably it, to be perfectly honest. They have such a good team around it. If they can get the goaltending figured out, then this is going to be a team that I do think continues to threaten for a Stanley Cup. As far as tonight is concerned, Florida taking on the Boston Bruins. The Florida Panthers need to show up in this game. Boston is going to be loud. It is going to be electric. They are going to boo the holy hell out of Sam Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk tonight. That is very obvious. Florida needs to be able to weather that. They've been in these types of situations before, but they put themselves in this spot by playing atrocious in that last game. For Boston, this is another one where it's very cliche, but all it takes is all you got. That kind of what the Boston Bruins need to do in this one. Colorado taking on Dallas. The Colorado Avalanche played a near perfect game in Game 5 to keep their season alive, and it still almost wasn't good enough. They need to play perfect in this game. All the players who elevated, that was great that you did it in one game. It now needs to be 2. Colorado, again, quite simply, just needs to play their best game of the series. For Dallas, no Roope Hintz really does sting. They have had quite a bit of depth scoring. Heiskanen has stepped up in a big-time way. Ottinger had a bit of a night off. He wasn't the reason why they lost, but he has stolen them quite a bit in these playoffs and in his time as a Dallas Star. See the Blasty logo behind me. Ask the Calgary Flames how that goes. He's very good. And I think that this is just such a complete team. But this is what we talked about it in the last one. Heart of a champion and whatnot for the Colorado Avalanche. They got it, and they put that pressure on. Quickly, some breaking news in the NHL today as the Toronto Maple Leafs have hired Craig Berube as their head coach. And I said this after Sheldon Keefe got hired. Great. Fantastic. That was certainly something on the to-do list. Can't be the only thing. When we're looking at key off-season additions and subtractions, Berube over Keefe can't be the headline. That certainly, on there, but it needs to be more. Coaching wasn't the biggest problem this team had. I do believe it was a problem, but it wasn't the biggest problem. They needed their best players to step up, and those guys didn't. And so that needs to be a fix. So you can bring whoever you want. Sheldon Keefe, Craig Berube, Rod Brindamore, Todd McClellan, Scotty Bowman, whoever you want in there. Players need to be better. The coach can only get them so far. This roster needs an upgrade, an upgrade. And I think the core 4 needs to be broken up a little bit. You look at these Stanley Cup playoffs. If the Toronto Maple Leafs squeaked into the final 8, they would rank 8th. Yes, they were close to making it out of the first round. They would have got their heads caved in this round. So you can say you're close to being a team that makes it to the second round of the playoffs. That shouldn't be the goal in year 8 of this thing. This needs to be a team that is threatening for Stanley Cups, not threatening for 4 wins. It's just not good enough. And I think this second round has really shown it. Florida against Boston, Toronto wouldn't have belonged in that series. Rangers against Carolina, Toronto wouldn't have belonged in that series. I get it's out west and it's a different conference, but eventually, if you want to get to where you want to get to, got to play those guys. Colorado, Dallas, not a chance. Vancouver, Edmonton, same thing. They would have got skated out of the arena. This is a team that has some high-end talent that doesn't play like it in the Stanley Cup playoffs and doesn't look like a high-end team when they get there. They look like a solid first-round banana peel, and that's about it. So maybe Craig Berube gets them another win or two, but they need the players to now carry a little bit more. So yes, congratulations for getting something off of the to-do list. A lot of work still to be done for Brad Treliving and the Toronto Maple Leafs. All right, let's take a look at some basketball, shall we? Another dominant performance from the Minnesota Timberwolves in Game 6 of their series with the Denver Nuggets, setting up a tremendous, phenomenal, can't-miss Game 7 this weekend. What a series again. And what a night last night for the Minnesota Timberwolves, who just rained hellfire from three. And look, those are going to happen. If you're looking at this from a Denver standpoint, defensively, like, okay, they shot the lights out. McDaniels probably isn't going to go, 8 for 10 or something like that. Like, that's probably the best shooting performance he's going to have. So defensively, you'll live with giving up 110 points. It's the 70 you got that is the big concern. Because, offensively, I do think Minnesota kind of just got hot. Defensively, Minnesota smothered Denver. Jamal Murray had another real bad game. Porter Jr. was okay. Gordon was okay. But Jokic, for his standards, was pretty quiet as well. They just absolutely smothered the Denver Nuggets. And it really felt like they had the Nuggets playbook and were running plays, like just kind of running the routes for them to steal the basketball term, or to steal the football term, sorry. This was complete and utter domination, and the best defensive team in the National Basketball Association showing they were the best defensive team in the National Basketball Association. I know Draymond was saying, like, what, Rudy Gobert, you're the best defense player in the league, Jokic is doing that to you? Well, now you're doing that to Jokic. And now it's going to be, again, so interesting to see how does Denver counterpunch this. They'll be at home. That late season game against Minnesota, huge in these standings, or to get them into second now, to set up this moment in time here where they have home court in Game 7. This is why you do that. But it can't just be, well, hey, we're at a different elevation now, we got them. Because they came into your barn and smoked you twice. So how are you going to respond? I think Murray has to be ready for pressure. I think Jokic has to be ready for that, and we know he will be, but the other guys need to be ready to step up as well. And defensively, it does need to be a little bit better. Too many open oops at the net, too many open looks from three. They need to be, like, Denver just needs to be a whole lot better, but this is going to be a legacy-defining game. In a couple of senses, I suppose. For Minnesota, if they get this, then they go from being, oh, okay, well, that's, like, good for them. Like, they're on their eyes to they've made it. Like, that is the difference. That they are a loss, and it's, okay, well, they gave the champs another hard push. Watch out for the Timberwolves. They're coming. They win. They've arrived. That's the difference. For Denver, a loss here, all those questions that were coming up after being down 2-0, I don't think they all come back. I don't think we question Jokic as the best player in the world, or question how good this Denver Nuggets team is, but you stop talking about dynasty. You stop talking about, like, okay, well, like, yeah, the young players coming, whatever. It starts to bring up a few questions, and you start to look at, okay, well, Murray keeps getting hurt, and eventually MPJ is probably going to want his own team, and how long is Gordon going to be able to do what he is doing, and can you get a few helpers? Like, it raises a few questions. Now, you win this series, and this, I think, will just, if they go on to win the series and win a championship, this will be looked at in the documentary of the team as, like, a real test that they had to go through, but just a test they had to pass. But in the moment, this will be probably the toughest challenge they have faced in their reign so far. And if they are able to come through that, I do think it raises them up another level when you talk about different championship teams. So that's that. That's it. That's all that's on the line this weekend. Tonight, it is the New York Knickerbockers looking to put away the Indiana Pacers. And the key for the Pacers, show up. They looked horrendous at Madison Square Garden in Game 5, and now they're back home, so I would imagine there's going to be a bit of life to start. They need Halliburton to be, I know he's been banged up, but they need Halliburton to be all-star Olympian Halliburton, not fading into the background Tyrese Halliburton. They need this guy to be their best player, and honestly, they kind of need him to be the best player on the floor, and that is including Jalen Brunson. They just flat out didn't show up, and at points in that game, they looked broken. if that continues, like, we're going to know quick. The Knicks are going to just smother these guys, break their will, and it'll be over. On the Knicks side, this is such an important game for them. I mean, obviously, it's Game 6. Every Game 6 is always important in a playoff series. Game 7, going back at the Garden, I feel comfortable that they would win that. But this is a team that is very clearly banged up. No OG, no Randall, no Bogdanovich. They are basically down to... Oh, no Mitchell Robinson. That's the other one I was trying to find. They are basically down to 6 guys, and they probably only trust like 4 of them. They need this win to just get a bit of a breather going into, excuse me, a matchup with the Boston Celtics, who didn't exactly have to exert a lot of effort in the first couple of rounds of these playoffs. So this is, I'm not going to say a must-win, because there is a Game 7, and I think they win Game 7 at home. But it just gives them at least a bit of a fighting chance if their guys can only have to play one 46-minute game instead of 2. So, it's just been a blast. It has been so much fun to watch all of this as this season has kind of gone on. So I'm excited to see where we go from here. Basketball and hockey have kind of dominated the landscape over the last little bit, but we're just a couple weeks away from the start of the CFL season. So today, it is the start of our CFL preview. Starting the CFL preview with a look back at last season. Each year, if you're new here, I go over the win-loss totals for every team and make prior predictions. And then when we get into the start of the next year, it's nice to go back and review and see where we were going into things. Now, things were up in the air in Ottawa at the time with the quarterback situation, I believe. So we only have 8 here, but the over-unders did really well for us a season ago. We will start in the East, where we had Hamilton Tiger Cats under 10.5 wins. A lot of people assuming that this is going to be a team that the Grey Cup's in their hometown. They've made a big deal for Bo Levi Mitchell. They're going to go for it. That was never believed by this podcast, and we came out to be right. That's a check mark. We got Hamilton under 10.5. Montreal over 7.5 wins. I thought that was a little low at the time. Like, Cody Fajardo there was definitely an upgrade, and the rest of the team's pretty good. So I thought people were sleeping on Montreal a little bit. We get a check mark there, 2 for 2. Toronto over 9.5. There were questions about Chad Kelly at the time. Now there are substantially different questions about Chad Kelly this season. And that's, what a gross story out in Toronto. But at the time, the questions were about his football playing. And while, again, you can question the other stuff, you can't question the football ability. He is quite good at that. And the rest of the team was stacked. We were like, yeah, of course, they're going to take it. A check mark as they go 16-2. So they cleared that one by around Labor Day. So we went perfect out east. In the West, BC over 9.5 wins. We got that one. I was a little bit surprised at people thinking, again, Rourke was amazing, but Vernon Adams was really, really good. And so we bought in on that, and we were correct, getting it at over 9.5. Calgary under 9.5. I was screaming from the mountaintops that this team was overrated and that this team didn't do enough to address a lot of the holes that they had. And it was just, well, yeah, Meyer came in and did whatever, so it'll be fine. I was worried about that. I'm still worried about that. Under 9.5, locked in. We nailed it. Edmonton under 7. 7 just seemed way too high for a team that had so many moving parts. You hated the quarterback and didn't like a lot of the weapons they had around him. Check mark. Got it. Thank you for waiting so long to put Trey Ford in. Winnipeg, over 13.5. This one we just scraped by. Winnipeg was just such a complete team. We believed in them greatly, and so we got that check mark. So we're 7 for 7. And we go 7 for 8 because the Saskatchewan Roughriders, we had it over 7 and they were at 6 wins for forever. And then they weren't, didn't get to over. We get stuck at 7. So we missed that one. If Trevor Harris stays healthy, we go 8 for 8 on this bad boy. But I think that the message here is that there was a lot of off-season noise that I think that the market's kind of overreacted to with these. So I do think that the lesson to learn going into this season is to just kind of take a level head and just kind of Occam's razor this. Like, okay, what's the most obvious outcome in this? Oh, it's that? Okay, let's go with that then. That is, I think, the way to go about this CFL preview. So we're going to continue these as the week goes along. Coming up on Monday, we are going to look at the best players in the CFL. The top 10 ranking will come out. And going to look at the most talented teams in the CFL. Normally we do a top 5. That would seem a little excessive in a league of 9, so we'll probably do a top 3 for that. And then coming up on Wednesday, we will have breakout player candidates as we get ready for the start of the Canadian Football League season. So that is going to do it for the show today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you are listening, thank you. Make sure that you download and subscribe wherever you are listening. A review also helps as well as we continue to try to grow this. And on the YouTube side, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment. Follow me on social media. I'm at Primetime Klein, and I'll talk to all of you in part 2 where we talk fighting next. Couch Potato Diary. Bye.